you clicked on it. This is another Lore Olympus Fan Art video. Now, before we get into anything, I am completely caught up. I'm waiting for Rachel to release things, please. And I'm going to be talking about some very serious spoilers when it comes to Lore Olympus. So let's get into this. Welcome, folks. I am Joe from joeThinks Art, and today we'll be doing some more Lore Olympus fan art. Now, just in case you haven't seen my previous video or you don't know what Lore Olympus actually is, Lore Olympus is a modern retelling of the Hades and Persephone story. It's made by a lady named Rachel Smythe, or at least I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right, and can be found on WebToons.com. I'll post a link in the description below again. And I have done a previous video of fan art for Lore Olympus, so I'll post a link to that in the description below as well. Now, in Lore Olympus, Hades has a tremendous number of dogs, or at least more dogs than I would personally own. And I wanted to depict that in this illustration, giving Kor, the goddess of spring, that side of Persephone, one of Hades' more cute dogs, and then of course putting Cerberus with Persephone, the bringer of death version of her. However, just to be clear, she's holding Cordon Bleu, not Russell. Now in this, Hades is depicted as more down to earth, more personable. He's conflicted about things. He has a girlfriend, he's into Persephone. Now there's an awful lot of romantic comedy going on, particularly in this comic, which, warning, if you're not into romantic comedy, this comic's probably not for you. But if you're into Greek mythology and not into romantic comedy, this comic's probably still for you anyway. And Persephone is depicted as a conflicted teenage girl out of her element. She was raised in the mortal realm and then leaves homeschooling and goes to Olympus to live with Artemis. And the entire contents of Lore Olympus happen, which I highly recommend that you read. Now, my illustration of Persephone here is not taken from the Lore Olympus comics, because I began this before I finished reading all of the comics, and that's why I have a little alteration to her eyes at the end of the video here. You'll see when we get there. And in my last Lore Olympus video, I spoke of my own Hades and my own Persephone from my role-playing worlds that I've created throughout the years. This is my bringer of death, Persephone, the goddess of undead, and her Cerberus, which I usually depicted or explained to be red and black, not blue and black like he is in Lore Olympus. But I thought this would be a little fun twist again to kind of throw on, such as the last time I did one of these, I took my Hades office and attempted to illustrate both Hades and Persephone before I was really uppity, before I had read the entire comic, so to speak, and really learned to respect and understand her telling of the story as well as her art style. The art style is pretty unique and pretty fantastic too. Now, you may have noticed I'm the kind of guy I like to lay down base colors first, and sometimes I grayscale on top of them and manipulate the layer, and sometimes I just paint and continue to go with the color scale I chose. Again, this is so fun because my Hades either wore armor because, it's a role-playing game, he's in combat, but when he was not in combat, he typically wore a suit, just like the Hades in Lore Olympus, which I really dig that parallel. I'm really looking forward to how Persephone is depicted in Lore Olympus once she becomes queen of the underworld, or if Rachel's even going to go that far, but I really hope she does. I know from some of the commentary that I have read, she has lots and lots of stuff planned. Where she's at isn't really clear in what she's got planned. And I know that there's talk of a Netflix series, but part of me wants the comic to be done before the Netflix series starts. And Rachel has been consistently putting out material, so it's not like that's a huge concern that the series will somehow overlap, kind of like Game of Thrones. It'd still be nice to just kind of be able to go back and compare, but that's my own personal opinion. Now, the background for this, I wanted to kind of have something, both Kor, the goddess of spring, and Persephone, the bringer of death, themed through colors, and then a little outside glow-like highlight for both Kor and Persephone, but not Hades. Hades, in my mind, he's standing there just completely pleased with himself. Yeah! That kind of expression. He's ecstatic. For me, this is the Hades that gets to keep his wife in the underworld at the end of the story, when we know Demeter and Hades go head to head over who gets to keep Persephone and who doesn't, until Zeus finally declares the way that it works out. That's what's so fascinating about modern retellings of stories like this. We know what's going to happen. We know that in the classical story, Persephone turns Minth into a mint plant in revenge or in anger. I can't wait to see that illustrated in Lore Olympus, and what other side god stories she might toss in. Such a craptastic logo, but the only way that you get better is to keep working at things. So that's my excuse. But don't worry, the weird choices I've made here in the logo make sense once you see the finished product. So in the end, I chose to go grayscale with this too. It's just easier than sitting down and painting a bunch. Even though when I edit these videos, I take what I've done and I make it basically a 10-minute video, or close to that, as I think I can accomplish. But in reality, this took like 3 hours to finish up and get just the way that I wanted it to be at the end. So grayscale it is. Another interesting thing is that it is never really, or at least it hasn't been approached yet, that Persephone's father is Zeus, who is Hades' brother. So again, we have a lot of this intermarrying happening within the Greek pantheon. The way that Ares is depicted, because in the comic, when you first meet Ares, he's extremely unhappy with Zeus and is running after him. It's so incredibly funny. There's also some pretty darn serious content that's covered as well related to Apollo and Persephone. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Joe, why are you reading romantic comics? Firstly, I would respond with, so? And secondly, I'm actually doing research for a new project I've chosen to take on partners with, which will be a romantic comedy style comic strip. I'm really excited. I'm not at the point where I can really tell you an awful lot about it, other than, unfortunately, Shin's Odyssey is going to be delayed until later this year, as I go through the concept phase and we begin to build this, me and this writer. And the greatest part about it is the writer is my wife, so it's going to be a husband and wife combo working on this. She'll be writing this particular comic, and I'll of course be helping her with that, and then I will be drawing and illustrating the comic, and she of course will be helping me with that. So I do apologize to anybody who is bummed out by the delay of Shin's Odyssey and is aware of more than just the website listing for it that just says coming soon. If you're really bummed out about the Shin's Odyssey thing, just leave me a comment down below and I'll do a video specifically about what it is and where I'm at. That way it'll kind of tide you over, if you know what I mean. Nothing quite like a few touch-ups at the end here. I don't know about you, but I often find the touch-up phase where you're just trying to put things back together, or embellish it a little bit here, maybe put a texture there. With this particular piece, I tried to stay simple, because again, I had started working on this before I had completed reading what's available for Lore Olympus. There was a balance I was trying to maintain in this particular image, without going too far in one direction or another. And I think I achieved that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about Lore Olympus specifically is the art style that is illustrated within. It's a very loose art style, where often the boundary lines that we are used to as illustrators and artists aren't there. And she makes heavy use of the spray paint tool, and good use of it, don't misunderstand. It's a very loose, ethereal style, and each of the characters are generally depicted as a major single color, which adds to the mysticism or etherealness of each of the comics. Well, I should probably end it there for today. If you like this type of content, please hit the like button, and it lets me know, and I'll make more material like this. And if you haven't, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and you'll be notified when I release new videos, which are released in Sunday afternoons. So remember, be kind to one another, and use your turn signals.